Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's a bit dreary out, but compared to the last couple weeks, it's actually quite nice. So I appreciate that. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance first, and then we'll introduce a few guests. So bear with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
States of
America
America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if we could have the majority of, or most people, go ahead and mute so we don't get background noise. We do have a few guests, and I saw one on Grace. Do you want to introduce your guest who's actually on my screen number 2, but I saw her name?
Yes, I would be very happy to. Carla, I don't see your face, and we would love to see your face if you don't mind. My guest is my really good longtime friend, Carla Lindquist. I've known her for 25 years. She is an RN, and she has spent in not too far distant past, has given 15 years to foster parenting. So I'm really glad to have her with us today. There you are.
Yeah, now I see Carla.
Hi, I'm sorry. I wasn't quite sure how to open up my video, but thank you, Grace, for the introduction and for inviting me. And I can't wait to see what it's all about.
Well, thank you for joining us, Carla. And I do see a guest that we've had in the past. Michelle Miller is on. And welcome, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. And I'm doing a real quick scan. I got to look at page 2. I don't recognize any unusual names, so I'll dispense with the guests. We do have announcements coming up, most of which are reminders. We do have a new member announcement, the second announcement for Steve Robinson. He's the executive director of Breakthrough House here in Topeka. And our board will be voting on that. And speaking of the board, we'll have a board meeting on Tuesday, March 9. The YWCA is doing the 21-day challenge for racial equity and social justice, kicking off just next week. So it's coming up. And I received an email from Grant Glenn. Grant said, I have a conflict, I cannot attend. But he strongly recommended this program. He is, as you may know, the chairman of the board of trustees for I always get this, Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area. And in that role, the FFNHA, I think, did this program a year ago, although he said it was spaced out over a longer period of time. But he said it was very impactful and strongly recommends that anybody and everybody try and participate in that program. Kind of on a similar note, and it was in yesterday's email, so I refer you back to those details. Karen Hiller made us aware of a program coming up. It's regarding equity and inclusion. It's put on by Topeka United. And the deadline to sign up for that is actually tomorrow. So if you are interested, please go back to yesterday's email. There is a link in there. Karen gives her contact information if you have questions. So that window is quickly closing. A few other reminders. Rotary International is looking for candidates for the Rotary Peace Fellowships. There was a flyer attached, I think I did yesterday's email. So if you know somebody that might be a candidate, please take a look at that. The District Foundation dinner is Saturday, March 20 at Prairie Band Casino. And our local foundation is still accepting grant applications from local nonprofits. And the recipients of those grants have to be a 501c3. So it has to be a nonprofit organization. I think that leads me to our speaker, and let me just kind of read some of our speakers. Barbara Stapleton, and Barbara is the Vice President of Business Retention and Talent Initiatives for the Greater Topeka Partnership. Barbara is on several different boards. She currently serves as the Vice Chair on Kansas's Local Area 2 Workforce Development Board. She's on Washburn University's Leadership Institute Advisory Board, Emporia State University's Corporate Advisory Board, and the IEDC's Higher Education Advisory Committee. She is a U.S. Chamber Foundation TPM Academy Cohort number 9 graduate and an ACCE fellow through the Fellowship for Education and Talent Development. She holds a BA in Political Science from Purdue University and a Master of Science in Management from Baker University. So that was a mouthful, but obviously eminently qualified. So Barbara, I'm going to turn it over to you, and she's going to talk about Choose Topeka.
Thank you so much, Stan. And I've also provided a link to the website that we have for Choose Topeka. I think I have spoken with you all previously. It's probably been a little bit, but I think we had talked at one time about the Choose Topeka Talent Relocation Incentive and the program that we have. And I want to share a couple of things with you. I think it'll let me share my screen. We will see here very quickly. I think previously it's grown quite a bit. Are you able to see the website currently? Great. I see some nodding heads, so that's perfect. So when we first went about trying to help support our existing businesses in the community in their talent relocation needs and recruitment efforts, we talked with employers in the community and initially really wanted to be able to develop this website. And so I'm showing you a much more completed website than the last time that we spoke. You can see that there are multiple different areas in terms of where to live, what types of opportunities there are as it relates to education, transportation, as well as healthcare. And then we also showcase the things as it relates to what are regional attractions or family fun, and go further into the breweries and wineries and restaurants and the diversity that we have within the community. And I'll click on one of those so you can kind of see that difference. This is kind of a snapshot of what the website looks like. It really helps support our existing businesses in terms of how they can recruit talent for any position that they might have. So this is a website that any recruiter or HR manager can share as they are providing the opportunity for someone to, they're offering a position, they want to say, hey, this is what our business has to offer, this is what the community has to offer. And so it kind of helps to sell the community as a whole and share kind of what different options are out there. This is really high level overview. And when I first talked with you, I think I talked with you specifically about the relocation incentive that rolled out early on. And so there were only 2 or 3 pages at that time. Like I showed you, there's quite a bit more out there now. We still, of course, have that relocation incentive. That was initially what rolled out. It partners with employers in the community to be able to offer up to $15,000 for a relocation incentive. It also works with employers for their existing employees that they might want to be able to make stickier and grow their roots within the organization and the community to ensure that you can retain them longer. So that's kind of an abbreviated, just a view of the website and what it looks like. I wasn't trying to get all of that information for you, but you can go out there. You've got the link in the chat, so you're able to see what those options are and play with it for yourself. But I really wanted to be able to, I'm going to do a new share. I wanted to be able to share with you kind of the update in terms of what it looks like now. And there's one more button to click. There we go. So since we rolled it out and since I spoke with you, we initially, of course, had that employer matching option. We added a remote worker option that the Joint Economic Development Organization approved in September. And these numbers, of course, are changing on a daily basis, but this gives you a snapshot of what we were looking at the end of January. So those numbers, of course, continue to update. But at that time, when we were running those numbers, we had 40 candidates, and we were developing that so that we could again seek funding for an additional round of funds and presented that to JADO. You can see that we had a small portion of our funds left, a little under 50,000 of the 300,000 that was originally requested and approved. And with that, we've been able to look at what the economic impact now is on the community in terms of bringing those 40 workers to the community. And that's both 25 that are in the employer match piece, as well as 15 that are remote workers. So we found our average salary when we first, did the initial analysis. We thought that these workers would be making average 60,000 per year. And so we saw that 6 times return on investment with the 2.5 million economic impact in the first year. What we found with the actual 40 candidates that we've been able to recruit to the community is an average salary much closer to 80,000. It's actually 80,000 for the employer match, and it's 82,000 for the remote workers. And so we've almost doubled our return on investment in that 1 year time period, and seen closer to an economic impact of, well, just a little over $3 million. That's what it looks like in terms of what we calculated, initial return on investment versus the current return on investment. And we'll continue to see that cumulative return over the next 5 years, is the calculation that our economist has provided for us. It's pretty exciting. I know that's a lot of data and numbers and statistics, but it gives you a feel for the investment that we're providing in terms of recruiting candidates to positions that are either critical or hard to fill for our existing employers in the community. We're also supporting them in their recruitment efforts. We're incrementally and strategically adding candidates to residents to our community. And of course, many of them are bringing trailing partners, some children. So it kind of helps to develop that talent pipeline longer term. A lot of the kids are, of course, under 10 years of age, but that actually excites me, because that means that we're going to be able to fill that talent pipeline in the next decade. And I think that's something that we need to be considering too. The other thing, and again, this is a moving target as well because it continues to adjust, but getting lots of coverage as it relates to what's going on within Topeka. So all of this is earned media. It's not something that we've necessarily paid for. We see, the Indianapolis Business Journal wanting to know about what's going on with relocation incentives. The newer news outlet in Kansas, the Kansas Reflector. And then of course we see it at the national level with Bankrate and the San Jose Inside. The public media, the Ohio NPR, was a podcast that they wanted to talk with us about, because their governor was talking about investing marketing dollars to be able to recruit people to the state of Ohio. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what we're actually seeing. Again, it changes on a weekly basis, if not sometimes even a daily basis. But we get so many calls. Our numbers continue to increase. I know that the economic impact in terms of the earned media, we're well over $5 million in terms of earned media across the country that we've been able to ascertain. And that continues to help support us in all of the different areas as it relates to economic development in the community. So that's really broad and high level. I know I didn't get into all of the details of the relocation incentive. I know we've talked about that previously, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you've got insight that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. And you can unmute yourself.
Saw in today's paper a company coming here. Do you have any additional information on that?
I'm sorry, you said what?
In today's paper, there was about a company expanding here in Topeka. Do you have any additional information beyond what was in the paper?
Don't have additional information beyond what was in the paper to be able to share, but that's exciting too. That's one of the examples of one of our community businesses that we already had here that was a much smaller operation. And so they've looked at where they can expand and where there is workforce that's available to them. And so we knew that they had looked at sites in terms of continuing to grow, and had worked with them on that piece of it as well. It's called Timilon, Michelle. I saw your question. It's in kind of that ag tech, and the article describes it very well in terms of the biosciences and what they do.
Do you have any numbers on the Walmart distribution center and how many people it may ultimately employ?
There are a couple different tiers on that, and I can look that up for you. I don't have them rolling off the top of my head because that was a business attraction project. So
Okay.
ultimately I will know what they are because I'll be working with them as an existing business. But I wasn't involved in that incentive because it was an attraction project.
Okay, the
It's
size of that
several- It's
building is
several
staggering.
hundred. Yeah, and they're still in construction currently.
Yeah.
So Barbara, that's really interesting information. I really appreciate what you've shared with us today. I'm thinking of a particular organization that is looking to replace somebody who's retiring, and there is a fairly wide search, and I know there's some people from out of town. Would those people qualify for the Choose Topeka grant if they came from elsewhere? If you could just explain some of the parameters, that'd be great.
Certainly. So it sounds like in this case, that would be for an employer that's here locally. So it would be part of the employer matching funds option, which that means the employer also commits to match those dollars. So an employer, there are several ranges. We have it tiered. In terms of a home purchase for a relocated candidate, they can qualify for up to 15,000. For a rental, they can qualify for up to 10. Here to allow employers to have some flexibility too. Some employers, smaller employers, aren't necessarily able to do $7,500 at that $15,000 level, but they might be able to offer a $5,000 or $10,000 commitment to purchase a home. So there's those three different levels. Employer would commit that they want to offer that to the candidate. They'd submit an application, and actually I can pull that up on the website again so you can see that. They'd submit the application on the employer side. I want to be able to share my screen so you can kind of see where I go. There we go. So I'm on this relocation incentive tab, and when you drop down, you'll see the employer guidelines. And on the employer guidelines page, part way down on this page then is the application for employers. There's information for them in terms of what it looks like and the employer guidelines, and then they can submit their candidate that they have. With that, the employer submits them. The employer, of course, needs to be able to retain them for a full year before they get reimbursement of that match. So ultimately, the employer will either upfront or through multiple, through a lump sum or two, or through stipends on a monthly basis. We have employers do a lot of different things in terms of how they provide that incentive. They just have to be able to prove that they have paid out that full amount that's in the agreement that they enter into with us. And then the employer would get reimbursement once they have retained that employee for 1 year's time full. But yes, I encourage employers, I have candidates, of course, reach out and say, hey, I'm looking at this position, and talk with your HR manager, talk with your recruiter. If they've got questions, we of course have shared this fairly broadly with employers. We've shared it with the distribution list that I have for human resources, but if employers haven't thought about it as an option, they're welcome to give me a call and kind of talk through what it looks like for them. We framed it so that it's customizable from the employer level, which I think is helpful. And it sounds like in that instance, it would be very beneficial. Does that answer your question, Grace?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. I know there were a couple other questions that I saw in the chat. The Walmart Distribution Center, we don't have a scheduled opening date yet for that, but we are kind of reaching back out to them in terms of where they're looking for that. So hopefully we'll have that fairly soon. And then I had another question. Thoughts on how COVID has impacted Topeka's economic position? That's interesting. And this goes back a little bit further, of course, not right at the beginning of the pandemic, but kind of late spring, early summer last year. And I think we're still seeing that. One of the good things, if you can consider it a good thing in midst of a pandemic, is that we do have considerable critical infrastructure, essential type positions with not only our food manufacturers, but in distribution and logistics. We're in positions, and of course, not every single employer is going to be critical or essential, but many of our larger employers were. And I think that went a long way to insulate us in terms of having exceedingly high unemployment rates and seeing where we're at even now. Of course, we've got positions that are open, that are open for candidates in the community, but all of our major employers in manufacturing, they did not have layoffs. They did not have furloughs for the most part. If anything, they were adding additional hours because they were running operations more frequently. When we have so many food manufacturers, and I have what we often refer to as clean food manufacturing, it's not the meat packing plants and things like that. We have, while you might not think of potato chips or M&Ms as essential food, it is still food and pet food, all those things that people continue to use even in light of the pandemic. And so they've been busier than ever, which is positive. And we've continued to see expansions. We've continued to see growth. I don't have the numbers with me in a slide, but we had 11 business retention and expansion projects last year, and 6 of those that have gone completely through fruition in terms of the incentive dollars, the capital investment, the number of jobs that they'd be adding over the next 5 years. So that speaks really well to the type of growth that we were able to continue to sustain even in light of the pandemic. Doesn't mean or minimize that there weren't issues. I think as an organization and as a community, we also stood up the supporttopeka.com website and developed HOST, which is referred to as Helping Others Support Topeka. We had private benefactors that provided dollars to be able to then influx those dollars into small businesses within the community. We purchased gift cards from those that were impacted, either dislocated, furloughed workers, underemployed, unemployed, and those employers that had those types of employees impacted that way, we were able to then provide gift cards access to. Doesn't mean that it resolves everything, but it does help considerably that there continued to be supports that as a community we stood up during that time period.
Barbara, this is Vince. I think chips are essential food, definitely. But you were very instrumental in the creation of Washburn Tech East. Could you talk about the importance of that facility and how it's doing today?
Absolutely. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, when we first started looking at the Washburn Tech East project, it was referred to as the East Topeka Learning Center. We started looking at data within the community in terms of those residents that either did not have a high school diploma or earned GED, those residents that didn't have any additional education beyond high school, and how that was impacting them as it relates to their opportunities in terms of the workforce. And we found that as a post-secondary institution, so after high school, East Topeka, and particularly in those zip codes 66605 and 66607, there was essentially an education desert. We started using that term, honestly, before I saw that on the national level, but that's really what it was, particularly at that post-secondary level. So there were lots of things involved in that, very time consuming in a very positive way, but planning in terms of looking at the data and what that meant and the number of households that could be impacted, particularly those households that had, I think, an earned income of under $26,000 a year, if I remember correctly. That's impactful. And I say household income, not individual income. So a household income of $26,000 a year. We've really been able to help support that. And I've talked with, it was probably just early last week, I was talking with Washburn Tech East. They have a wait list on their for their GED, not only the classes and programming, but the testing too, partly related to social distancing and everything that we of course have to follow now, but there's that much need and there's that much interest still. And so that's one thing. And they not only do they offer the GED testing, but they also offer that entry level career technical education certificates in multiple different things in healthcare and construction trades, those types of things that can help everyone be able to get the training they need to earn a living wage. So was there anything I missed on that you'd like me to touch on, Vince?
No, that was exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, the difference in the employer or remote incentive. Okay, sorry, I'm reading and looking. And So the employer matching incentive is originally what we introduced, and it allows the employer to offer, like I said, to a candidate they're going to recruit, or even a current employee that they have that lives outside of Shawnee County, to recruit them to the community. There is a frequently asked questions and FAQ on the website that kind of touches on some of those things as well. But it just means that the employer, of course, is also vested in this incentive because it is performance-based. The employer not only has to recruit or retain that candidate for a year's time before they receive the match back, but we're hoping that they'll be able to cultivate that employee to be here, as a resident for many years to come. The remote incentive is for remote workers that have an employer outside of Shawnee County, but they have expressed an interest that they want to be able to live and work in Topeka as a remote worker. Some of them we've heard from, of course, they're originally from Northeast Kansas, or they have some other kind of a tie that is to this area. Others we hear, they're just originally from the Midwest, and they don't necessarily want to go back to Iowa or wherever they lived because they also have family further south in Oklahoma or Texas or out in Colorado, but they're on the coast or they're in Chicago, and they want to get back to the quality of life that they're accustomed to, that friendliness. A lot of times they talk about it in terms of that friendliness. We refer to it as, Kansas nice, and they miss that. They don't find that anymore. And so we hear different stories, of course, from different remote workers. But, we had one remote worker. It wasn't that he had ties to Kansas, but he was a game developer in San Francisco and San Jose, actually, and realized he was never going to be able to afford a home. He wanted, of course, to own a home, but it was going to cost him probably $600,000 or more to purchase a home that probably needed to be torn down just to be able to have the land and then rebuild. He was able to purchase a home here in central Topeka, just north of 6th Street, kind of not in the Potwin area, but kind of Potwin adjacent. I think actually Councilwoman Hiller refers to it. She's like on the river, on kind of that river area up nearby Sumner Schools. Purchase it for $50,000. He's done so much to it already in terms of a rehabilitation, and we're continuing to see that of people that are interested in not only investing for the homes that they're purchasing, but continuing to invest otherwise to be able to rehabilitate and kind of bring new life to some of the older homes that we have in central Topeka.
So does that one require an employee match?
It does not require an employee match, but it does require authorization from their employer to work remotely. We do verify employment with that employer to ensure that they do have the salary to be able to support themselves. We conduct interviews with our review committee that we have to ensure that they're indeed a good fit for the community and that they're going to be able to support themselves when they move here. So it is still tied to employment, but in a different way.
And I noticed that there's something with sub sandwiches too, with a sub company. That sounds exciting.
We did that actually with that first round of funding. So once that last bit of funding is gone, we'd have to talk with them again about that continuing to be an option. But yes, they did offer that with the first round of funds, the first candidates.
Do we have any other questions for Barbara? As I scan the gallery.
Well, so I just have to say that Barbara, I will have chosen Topeka as of May, and I will have been here for a year in May. So I'll have you reaching out to my employer to see if they'll participate. But I love Topeka. And honestly, I think Melissa got me onto the Topeka Rotary, and I just enjoy my Thursdays at Topeka Rotary so much. So
That's great.
it's a great program. I'm excited about it.
Barbara, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. I'm curious if you could speak to it all, if you're seeing any dynamic or what the statistics would look like on participants in Choose Topeka that maybe like professionals or people who work in Topeka but live in Lawrence or Kansas City. I know that that's been an ongoing trend forever, and I think especially with young professionals, they tend to live in Lawrence or Kansas City. What are you seeing there as far as like people using Choose Topeka in that situation?
Allison, that was the exact indicator in terms of what kind of originally initiated this look at developing this incentive. So, and you'll see that in the FAQs as well. We had found with our economic development strategy, which you all probably may have heard as Momentum 2022, when we pulled all of that data back in 2017, we found that 40% of our workforce population that made over $40,000 a year in Shawnee County did not live in Shawnee County. You are absolutely right. And so that's why when I say that the employer match is either for relocation or retention, it's to help target and support those employers who have employees that live outside of our county, but they want to retain them and recruit them to live in the county. And we have had, rather than you all waiting for me to pull up, I've got so many databases as it relates to Choose Topeka, but just thinking off the top of my head, I know that I think 6 of those 25 employer matched are from somewhere else within Kansas. Now, one may have already, maybe they recruited, from somewhere else, but I know we've had at least 3 that are from the Kansas City metro area, whether that's, St. Joseph, Missouri or Lenexa, Kansas. I know we've had one from Manhattan. I know we've had one from Lawrence. And so there is a blend, and that was exactly the intent. There are other things that, of course, it's been helped us benefit from, but that was a driving factor in developing the program. Great question.
Any more questions before we wrap up? I did not, I think it was during our early session before we got officially started, Dick Knoll asked the question about in-person meetings, and I will tell you this is very tentative, but our target is April 1 to return to the zoo. And I'm excited about that. Hopefully the numbers keep going in the right direction. Of course, the county has lifted some of the restrictions that'll give us the ability to have a meeting. Actually, I think we could have a fairly large meeting. I know some people are still nervous about getting out and about and have not had their vaccination, and that's understandable. But we should be able to get back into the event venue at Kay's Garden here in just a little over a month. And so more about that, and we'll talk about that at the upcoming board meeting, but I thought I'd throw that teaser out there that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think it'll be fun to get back together. The little sessions we had before, I would encourage you to tune in a little bit early, because it is fun kind of having just some social conversation. But it would be even better if we could to do this in person. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining. Our meeting next week will be from our own community service committee to give us an update on what kind of service projects have been going on and maybe what's coming down the pike. So look forward to that. And I think that's it. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll do the 4-way test, or the 4-way plus test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And will it be fun and kind? Good day, everybody. Stay healthy and safe, and look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Thanks a lot for attending.
Thank you, Barbara, for an excellent program.
Yes, it was good. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So Barbara, I've actually emailed you back and forth a little bit. I applied back in April, and then I
Okay.
emailed you last May, a year ago, and a couple of people, we emailed back and forth a little bit. So now that I've been here a little while, I'm going to give you my employer's name. I work for the state, and I know you emailed back that some of the state agencies had been willing to support. But my HR department, I'm for the Department of Education, and they don't know about it. So I'll put you in touch with Wendy, who's my HR director, and she's fabulous. But so I'm really hopeful that they'll jump in and participate too.
Yeah, I'm happy to visit with her, and you can share the website with her and show her where the employer piece is as well. But yeah, we share it as broadly as we can, but sometimes not everyone is still aware. You know, we've had press releases, we've had it in the paper, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm interested, because you guys didn't have the remote piece.
No.
Right now I'm remote. So anyway, I will look forward to talking with you about it more.
But the remote is for those workers that are here who have employers that are outside the county. It is not for remote work of existing employers within the county.
Yeah, so I just moved here in May and I bought a house in August. So I guess it'll be interesting if my employer isn't able to. I don't know how the federal education funds come in and out. I don't know if that's even something that's allowable. But
That's a good question. I think it probably depends for them. But I know at the state level, we have had state agencies ask information about it. It doesn't mean that they've pursued it, but I know that they've indicated in some departments, like when they're needing engineers, that it's something they're aware that it could be one of the tools in their toolkit for recruitment.
okay. Well, we'll have to figure it out, because I applied in April, almost a year ago, and it was a real big incentive I had job opportunities in Wichita and a job opportunity in Newton. And the Choose Topeka was really made a difference in which offer I chose to accept. So it's exciting. So we'll have to figure it out.
Hopefully they'll commit. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.